And how's it going, guys? I'm going to be speaking at VidCon US this year. I got 2 workshops planned. If you're going to be there, make sure to say hey. And before we get into the main video, let's talk about some free stuff I want to give to you, no strings attached. First, you can check out my 10 free matte transitions pack in the second link below. In the third link below, you can check out my Premiere Freebies mega list. It's basically a curated list that's going to give you all the best free Premiere effects packs that are on the internet. And if you look at the next link after that, I got another freebie list for After Effects. It's pretty cool. And how's it going, guys? It's Josh, aka Olufemi.
Hey, and this is Kris from Kris Go Art.
My bro Kris is a talented YouTuber as well, and teacher, educator, creator. You can check out his stuff at Kris Go Art YouTube channel. You guys probably already know about him. But for this video, guys, we're going to talk about the Panasonic S1H.
So this camera piqued our attention. I'm sure it probably piqued yours as well. But sometimes the hype is real, sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's it's just a little bit more complicated than just what is announced. And yeah, I think we're just going to share our opinions on what we think of the specs and whether you should or should not buy this camera.
All right, so we just drove to the top of a random hill. What's this hill called, Kris?
I'm not sure, but there are labels everywhere that say no stopping at any time. But that's the mood for 2019.
Rebels. This is something really interesting in that we see so much hype when all these new cameras are coming out, these new mirrorless cameras specifically. And there's been a lot of them coming out. The Fuji X-T3 that just came out, A7R3 has been out for a little bit.
Yeah, it's such a race. Like there's just so much coming out all the time.
Yeah, and so like each one of these, we're like, oh my gosh, all these things, all these awesome specs we've been waiting for so long. Canon, you know, still sucks kind of as far as a lot of specs. They're great with color, but
yep.
You know, I don't
catching up a little bit in some things. Yeah,
Canon DSLRs, I don't think Canon finally started doing mirrorless. I don't think they've gotten to 4K yet. You know, but it's okay. You know, Canon.
Take your time.
Take your time. I'm done with Canon. You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Panasonic. It has finally, you know, given us a few things that we've been asking for a while. 6K. You hear 6K, and we get so excited. They put out a bunch of specs for the S1H, but what I would say is be careful how excited you get if you don't have all the information. I don't think Panasonic is giving us all the information that we need to fully evaluate how good this camera is. And I think it's kind of shady how they put out some really good product points, but they kind of leave out a lot of information. I'm going to give you guys a few examples. As far as the product points that they love to mention is that this is going to be a full frame camera, right? Full frame camera. Panasonic is known for their crops. You know, you can get your speed boosters and all that stuff to make it a little bit better, but Panasonic has always sucked, in my opinion, as far as compared to other companies as far as how much they crop their images.
So for example, when we were looking at the 4K specs, it's all great in full frame when you're shooting at like 24 frames per second, but then when you want to jump to slow-mo, like 60 frames, now we get a crop.
We're not sure it's going to be a crop, but based on a lot of research I did, it's most likely because of the sensor they're using, it's going to be cropped.
Yeah, which again, it's one of those things that it shouldn't be left up to us to kind of like dig through and find out this information. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the main thing. Don't take everything at face value because these companies are trying to sell to you, and they know filmmakers very well. They know what triggers them and what gets them excited.
Let's talk about bit depth.
Let's do that. That's
okay.
Important.
So they are so proud to announce that they're going to do 10. It's going to be 10 bits at 4K,
which is great.
Which is really good.
Pretty solid. Honestly.
Really good at 60p. You get 10 bits, but they suspiciously omit whether you're going to get 10 bits at 6K. And remember, they've already mentioned 6K. This is the first 6K camera. And then they kind of in their product specs, they do in their product points, they say 10-bit 60p 4K. Okay, so I'm assuming that means 6K is going to be 8-bit, which sucks.
Yeah.
We've dealt with 8-bit for a while. Let's start upping everything to 10-bit, or at least just be honest, you know?
Exactly, because then the 6K doesn't become as appealing to me personally, because I would much rather stay with, 4K is still very reasonable as far as resolution. You could do a lot, you could play a lot with crops and displaying in different parts, but when it comes to the bit depth, that's when you have things fall apart when you're color grading, so that becomes even more important sometimes depending on what you're doing than resolution.
14 stops at dynamic range. That's a really good point.
That's great.
That's great.
Really great.
My A7S Mark II, it has 12 stops,
which is in my workflow so far that has worked, but of course any other bit of extra dynamic range that we can get, that's always better. And 14 is honestly pretty pretty solid.
Yeah, L mount lens. That's gonna give you a wide range of lenses. I think L mount is, Panasonic Sigma, I believe. I think Leica too. So a few other things we don't know about this camera. We don't know how often it goes through batteries. That's a problem the Blackmagic Pocket had, 4K had. We don't know how often it overheats.
Which, speaking of which, I think we're overheating a little bit in this car. So let's take a look at this view.
Let's head out. Ooh, this is way better.
Much
Hey, look at this view too.
That's better too.
It's crazy. Let's talk about the price.
Yeah.
The price of this new Panasonic S1H is like around $4,000. That's what they're thinking.
Yeah, which is for what it promises.
Okay.
I would say it's not terrible, but also when you compare it to a lot of the other cameras that are out now, it's like
The Blackmagic Pocket 4K. I always mess up with that name, but it's like $1,300.
that's impressive.
And like I was looking at some of the points, like the Blackmagic, it's like has almost the same specs. The one thing about the Blackmagic is the ergonomics are horrible. Like it's like a box you have to try to hold and make somehow a
Functional, like fully packaged camera, which also costs money. So that price point, that's impressive. But then when you start to see, like, okay, well, to have it running for a certain amount of time, I need to get an external battery, and then I need all these like monitoring options, accessories, and all that stuff. Just like with any camera. But I think the Blackmagic Pocket, and in it's all of its history, it's always needed a few extra things to beef it up to sustain most shoots that end up costing extra money.
like I know dynamic range is like 13 stops. The batteries, I've heard, they run through batteries a lot. There's definitely some issues with the Blackmagic Pocket, but I think that if I were to choose between the Blackmagic Pocket for that price, be it that it may cost a little bit extra and put some rails to prop stuff up and make stuff more ergonomic, still compared to the $4,000 that this new Panasonic is offering, I still would take the Blackmagic.
Oh, absolutely. And for a lot of reasons too, it's just, this kind of taps into the overall, I think, point of this video, which is just to pick a camera that works for you. Sometimes you really don't need the 6K. As appealing as that sounds, it really depends, like, as a filmmaker and the type of videos that you shoot, the type of content that you create, what camera suits that.
So, Kris, I know we haven't even covered all the different product points that the S1H even has. I think we covered the most important ones, though. But when it gets to the bottom of it, when you're thinking about buying and shelling out all this money for a new camera, what are, like, say, the 3 things that are the most important to you at this time regarding new camera equipment?
So, to start off, it's 2019. I have to have at least 4K. For different reasons, I also sometimes like to reframe and crop into some things and readjust my framing that way. For VFX, tracking, keying, it's always handy to have 4K. And then something that ties into this is also the bit rate. Obviously, the higher the bit rate, the better. 10-bit. Please give me 10-bit.
Please, guys, please.
When you see the difference from 8-bit to 10-bit, especially when you're color grading, when you're pushing the footage in certain directions, depending on what you're doing, you see how quickly it falls apart when it is 8-bit and not 10-bit. And then finally, another thing that I've had discussions over, some people say it's not necessarily because cinema cameras don't have it, but for me, it's super important to have the sensor inside the camera stabilized. I understand that you can use a gimbal for the camera and you can always stabilize that way, but for the way that I shoot, sometimes I want to capture a moment, and a lot of times I'm working against time, I'm in a time crunch. It's just so nice for me to know that I could just take out my A7S II, but that has a stabilized sensor, and I can even get some handheld shots that are passable because it's taking rid of some of the jitteriness that comes from a small form factor, and which also helps with small bumps when you're using a slider or even a gimbal. So I think that is such a handy feature to have. So those are my must-haves, but what are yours? Like in a camera, what do you want to see in a camera that you want to own right now?
Check this out, guys. I have one word: 10-bit. Please. I'm not gonna buy another camera unless it's 10-bit. That's my little rule.
Yeah.
I'm done with 8-bit. I don't want to buy a red right now. I can't buy a red right now.
Okay, so maybe this camera isn't the best choice right now. What do you think that is in the market now or that's coming out soon? What do you think would be a better option?
I think, guys, the Sony A7S Mark III is going to be the camera of our dreams. Because at this point, there's all this competition. All these cameras have come out. They know all the specs that they need to beat. I think they're going to make this camera perfect. They've had the time. I think it might be coming out in the fall. Don't quote me. It's coming out at some point, hopefully soon. I'm going to just save my money, guys, and wait for that camera.
Yeah, I think it'll be groundbreaking like the first one was. And even the changes that the second one brought, 4K internally and the stabilized sensor, these are all things that like it was so groundbreaking that the third version, I can't even imagine what they'll have. I'm sure the specs are going to be crazy, and that's the type of hype that I'll probably buy into. I'm definitely saving my money for that.
Kinefinity 2, we did a video a little while ago about Kinefinity at NAB. That camera, both those cameras, or there's like 3 cameras. They have really good specs as well. They're a little bit more expensive than the price range that a lot of us want to really be spending. Who am I to say? I'm a cheap. I love spending little money on cameras, as little as possible.
But also the form factor. I mean, that's aside from the price too. It's just like Kinefinity, a little bulky.
Yeah, you're right. Like, the form.
Yeah, I think it's a good red replacement if you're in that sort of market.
We got to remember Kinefinity cameras are also killing it right now as far as offering really well-priced solutions with a lot of really top specs. They're a little bit more expensive than kind of the realm that we're talking about in this video. But yeah, that Sony A7S Mark III. Hopefully they fix their some of the color issues they've had in the past. I'm just believing Sony is going to be the camera of our dreams.
So I think, with all these cameras, again, I think it really depends on the point of where you are in your career and your specific needs. Because honestly, what's already out there, like an A7S Mark II, or even the first one, depending on your budget and what you're using it for, that might be your camera. So I think when all these new announcements are made, the excitement, it's there. We're always itching to kind of improve the limitations that we have as filmmakers, like get higher resolution, get all these different possibilities, and it's a very exciting time. And I think we're both very excited for the progress that's being made, and I love that these companies are trying to raise the bar and they're competing with each other, and I think that creates a very healthy environment. I think that as a consumer, we also need to understand it for what it is, and keep up with the pace of technology, still be in the loop, but also not get too carried away, because I know that can happen sometimes.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, keep it chill, and Panasonic, don't be shady with your product points. Guys, we're still figuring out the details regarding when and where this creative meetup is going to take place, but don't worry, details are coming soon. And guys, if you want, it would be dope if you could support the channel by letting us help you as well. You can check out the link below to get a subscription to Envato Elements. It's about $33 a month, and you can get unlimited downloads for the top transition packs, stock footage, effects packs, title packs, any type of VFX packs you can think of. It's pretty amazing. Of course, 2 more standalone items, my favorite transition pack and my favorite sound effects pack. Check it out. It's amazing. Thanks so much for watching, guys, as always, and remember to keep it chill.